What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to another Fridge Financials video. In today's video, we are talking some interesting potential economic indicators here. So we're going to talk about what these could potentially mean for the economy, and not a good time to talk about this, obviously, because of the data we had that came out recently, as we know. But if you're excited for today's video or just curious to know what the new indicators are, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn those bell notifications for all future uploads. This article came across my feed. Pet spending has sourced in its code, but some Americans can't afford to keep their cats and dogs. Owner surrenders have soared across the U.S. this year as families grapple with higher costs. There's your inflation part right there. Does that say anything about the economy? Okay. America loves pets, right? Of course. 49 million households have a cat and 68 million have a dog. That means without even counting fish, reptiles, horses, or birds, a large majority of households have a pet. But now some owners are having to give up their furry friends, with CNN reporting a rise in owner surrenders as the increasing cost of ownership bites. One animal shelter in North Carolina reported that owner surrenders are up 43% this year. Meanwhile, Rough Start Rescue Minnesota has seen applications rise 16%. And the Animal Care Centers of New York says that it has reached a breaking point, suspending its intake entirely. Basically, like, they cannot take any more pets up into their, their rescue centers like that because they don't have enough space. They're at full capacity here. Per the APPA, Americans are on track to drop $157 billion on their pets this year, 62% more than 2019, which is pre-pandemic levels. About 43% of that is on people sustaining their pets day to day with food and treats, while the rest is spending on vet care, medicine, supplies, and more. And again, here's a nice little cool infographic. Look at the spending of pets. And obviously, we always talk about, if you're a pet owner and you're a pet lover, you're going to do whatever you can to take care of your pet, whether it's through vet bills, specific foods, those kind of things, right? Indeed, though, pet food costs are up more than 20% since the pandemic, and seems to be pet services like veterinary access and grooming that are breaking the bank. Pet services are 42% more expensive this year than 2019. Then it starts to lead into this idea. Are pets a recession indicator? We talk about the 10-2 yield curve. We talk about the unemployment numbers. We talk about this and that and this and that. But are pets also a recession indicator? It might sound barking mad. Oh, these puns, man, let me tell you. But given the emotional connection involved, any decision to surrender a pet is presumably never taken lightly, suggesting serious economic hardship is likely at play when so many Americans make the difficult choice to give up their companions. Your pet that you've fallen in love with, that has been your number one for many, many years, if you are giving it up, if you're giving up that ownership of your pet, you are on some hardships, right? It makes sense, right? Like, could the pet adoption increases mean that people are giving it up because they can't afford it, right? I mean, the spending is absolutely outrageous. So is that a possibility? Who really quite knows, right? And this brings up the idea of other major indicators that people have talked about for many, many years. The first one that's more common is what is called the lipstick index. This is an index that has been developed in many, many years now. During the 2008 financial crisis, which we all know what happened there, we talk about the lipstick index. So Leonard Lauder, chairman of Estee Lauder Companies and creator of the lipstick index, passed away. Oh, okay, that's really unfortunate. But let's talk about it, right? So before recession appears in economic reports, it manifests in daily consumer decisions, like consumer spending, right? We look at consumer spending to see how prices are changing. Canceled hair appointments become more frequent. Home-packed lunches replace restaurant orders. Designer handbag wishes are substituted with a $30 lipstick. The lipstick index theory, coined by Estee Lauder's chairman, suggests that in tough times, consumers turn to affordable luxuries such as cosmetics for emotional comfort without a huge financial commitment. Historical evidence on cosmetic sales appeared to validate this pattern from the Great Depression to more recent downturns. So basically saying that, hey, if you're in a tough time for spending, you still want to have that luxurious feel still, you might go out and buy a nice fancy lipstick that might be $30 instead of buying a brand new handbag that could be like $300 or $3,000, right? but the last quarterly earnings suggest that this one reliable indicator may no longer hold. During economic downturns, economists examine consumer spending patterns for early recession indicators. Of course, right? You look at, that PCE, you look at the, consumer spending reports, you look at all the different data points that come out here to see what the consumers are doing, right? And see how prices are changing and what they're doing. If people aren't spending a lot, they're hoarding cash. That means they're fearful of what's going to happen. And again, the more we hold the cash, the less is in the economy, the more the economy will stall over time, right? So among these signals, the beauty industry offers an intriguing metric that might predict the economy's direction over the coming year. And again, it comes from this. His theory proposed that economic uncertainty drives people toward the most affordable luxuries. Instead of making expensive purchases, consumers simply shift to smaller indulgences to provide emotional comfort. So that's really interesting thing to talk about there. Following the 2008 financial crisis, recession here became a recognized indicator. Okay, so on and so forth. Although economists still debate this theory's validity, J.P. Morgan's wealth manager argues that Lauder's idea holds some truth. With inflation making big expenses like homes and cars harder to afford, many consumers turn to small luxury items like a $30 Dior lip plumper to scratch the consumer itch. We can take a look at the data here, actually, taking a look at what happened here, right? So you have your inflation that's, about 2% here or so, which is really interesting here. And then when inflation ticks up here, we get that recessionary period potentially coming into play here. And those higher inflation values mean that people aren't spending as much. But what happens? The lipstick index has a higher spike that goes with it as a result. So this leads me to my last indicator that I think is actually a really funny indicator here. And believe it or not, it is called the stripper index. I know, right? Um, and I kid you not, it's a thing that people have talked about here. The stripper index, named for how it relates the revenue generated by strippers' cash tips to the financial strain of consumers in the current economic cycle. Though it encompasses all forms of sexual labor, has been mostly a joke to economists as they continue to explore different methods of predicting the economy. However, when ex-user and stripper username correctly predicted the economic decline in 2022 based on her recent profits at work, economists began to examine the stripper index more closely. Though the relationship between the direction of the economy and the earnings of the sex industry depicted in the stripper index may initially seem arbitrary, economists can look to the decline in the discretionary income during economic strain for evidence of the correlation. If you don't have the money to spend to go to the strip club, obviously you don't. Instead of throwing $100 bills, maybe you're throwing $5 bills, the tips are down. The workers will be able to tell you, hey, my profits are down. It's very interesting, how there's different ways to think about this. Instead of taking the direct approach here, the stripper index is a thing, And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, right? So this talks more about it and about, what we're looking at here. When people have less discretionary money, going to the strip club isn't an immediate necessary thing that they have to do. In recessions, people are spending more on things they need. Food, bills, energy, gas. You can see that that's happening right now because of inflation. People are really feeling that in their pockets. Strippers and other sex workers are heavily relying on cash payments and tips as they receive 66.7% of payments for sex in cash. Okay, interesting enough. It's just, I don't know if they have anything else here that we talk about here. Respecting, okay, yeah. All right. And then there's this one thing here that's pretty interesting also. You can't track the stripper index, but these 10 weird indices might be even better. Does it actually exist? Again, it's a thing that we talk about where is it a possibility, which should be called the dancer's tip index. Yeah, sure. There's 5 dancer-related data points to track. The RCI Hospitality Holdings is the only gentleman's club, which is obviously strip clubs and stuff like that. So that's one thing to take a look at, which is on the stock market. Your state's business fees, taxes is a fabulous example of how you could track dance-related data because they have a poll tax. Interesting. So where in every gentleman's club they serve booze must pay a $10 per head fee, which is reported and paid quarterly. Okay, so you can watch the Texas poll tax. Entertainers' wages. Every year around May, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows total employment and median hourly pay for dancers. But the rub here is that it includes backup dancers and ballet dancers. Yeah, I don't know if we can include all that in there. The Federal Reserve Economic Data tracks local, state, and federal data across each industry, in this case, other amusement and recreation. This category includes adult cabarets, gentlemen's clubs, strip clubs, pool halls, and everything else cool that your mom would be ashamed of you doing. And you take a look at the revenue, and you start to see a little bit of that peak off here. Look at that nice little, starting to maybe have a little bit of a pullback here. Looks like going to this screenshot here. So a little bit of that pullback might not be, you get the huge pullback during the recessionary period here. So same thing happening here. Very interesting. Google Trends could be another thing to take a look at as well. Think about what people are looking up. You can check customer demand by looking at bachelor party ideas, strip club near me, and labor supply by become a stripper or exotic dance license. Interest by subregion, you look at the undie index, there's a men's underwear index. That's wild. The lipstick index, the RV index, the box index, the freight index, which the freight one makes sense for freight orders for shipping and stuff like that. It makes a lot of sense there as well. So very interesting. Now, the point of this video here was not to make you feel, sad about pet adoptions being, super low in inventory. I hate to say inventory, but not inventory, but shelters are maxed out at capacity here for these cute dogs and cute cats, stuff like that. But also that there's other ways to look at where the economy is going besides just the data points. A lot of the data points that we have where it's like unemployment, where it's inflation, like all those different things there focus more on lagging behind. They go from the previous month. But taking a look at, the adoption centers for dogs and cats and animals, taking a look at, what the beauty companies are having for earnings and what they're posting about and stuff like that. Taking a look to see, are strippers getting paid more or getting paid less, right? There's a lot of these different indicators that can help dictate where the economy is going. And I'll tell you right now, the fact that people are putting their dogs and cats up for adoption at pretty high values right now, pretty high percentages, that's scary because I know a majority of people I talk to and a majority of people that I know are attached to the hip to their animals. So a very interesting thing to think about. And again, the point of this is, again, to talk about maybe it's not a bad thing to go outside the box for reading the economy and where we're going, right? You can look at the data, you look at Jerome Powell, you can look at, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you look at all these different data points here, but at the end of the day, maybe there's other things outside that are depicting where the economy goes. So keep your head on a swivel for that one. Go into different articles, look at different indices, because believe it or not, it may make a huge difference. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Again, if you made it this far in the video, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell notifications as always for all future uploads. I hope you're making money in the market in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through investing in, stocks, ETFs. Hopefully you're not into giving up your dog for adoption or your cat for adoption. And, maybe, you're invested in those makeup companies and those gentleman club indices. Who really knows, right? And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.